We have 6:03 here.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wait for one.
Right then.
Good.
All right, I'll go ahead and call to order the Pleasant View City Council meeting this Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. It's 6:04 PM. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, opening prayer reading or expression of thought by Council Member Sarah Uri.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we are so grateful to gather here together as citizens of this great city of Pleasant View. We're grateful for the opportunity to discuss items on the agenda that affect the residents here and the well-being of our beautiful city. Help us as the council and mayor to make wise decisions on the residents' behalf and help us to be prudent and knowledgeable in all things. We're so grateful for our city staff, for our public works department, for our police department and our office staff and all those who work so diligently to make sure that we have all the amenities and public safety that we need here in this city. We ask you to please bless our military that are serving on our behalf. Bless them to be out of harm's way and to be safe and protected and watched over. We ask thee to be with the leaders of this great state and nation, that they will also make good decisions on our behalf and those that they represent. We're grateful for the many wonderful blessings that we have, and we ask that thy spirit will be with us tonight. We say these things in the name of thy son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Item 1B, declaration of conflicts of interest. We reviewed the agenda and any conflicts to declare. Seeing none, we'll move to item 1C, public comments, questions for the mayor or council, limited to 3 minutes. Is there any member of the public who wish to address the council? Mr. Major? Please state your name. Yeah.
Chris Major.
Is that mic on?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I'm Chris Major. Hi.
Hi.
I just had a question on the new state regulation. I'm not even sure what it is, and it is to each city with different, I guess, extracurricular vehicles or like e-bikes along the road and different things. In the newsletter, my friend had shared with me, it said different things, but it did not say golf carts, and I have a golf cart that I ride my grandkids around on, and I did get pulled over, lights, everything, saying that it's illegal, but it's up to each city to pass. So just hoping that golf carts aren't dangerous. I don't know what else to say.
That is a ordinance that we're allowed to pass. We don't have one currently. We could certainly look at something that I'm sure want to be restricted to adults only in certain things.
Right, I can see that.
I don't know. We could look at it, but
One of the worst accidents we've ever had involved a golf cart
Okay.
in.
We do have a golf cart in our
Pleasant
city.
View. Huh?
We do have a golf course in our city.
know.
That I do take the golf cart down to.
I understand, but one of the most serious accidents involving kids, how many kids was it?
Was a kid driving it?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I'm speaking like.
I
I'm
understand, I
driving.
understand, but you say, but anyway, just.
Yeah.
It would, just.
It'd have to be.
FYI,
Be very careful.
one of the
Right,
most,
I'll get with the chief and we'll
okay,
look at some.
all right, so
Okay.
where do I go from here? Do I contact you?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
fine.
All
Yeah,
right,
and you can call us too.
Or you can call me or chief. Yeah. Hey, anybody else?
Hello, Julie Fard, I went to give my old address, 4275 North, 500 West in Pleasant View. And I'm here to speak for a couple of minutes on my concerns about the development agreement. Mainly it's in regards to the whole rural road concept. First of all, I am not against a rural road standard. I'm not against an ordinance. In fact, you may remember a couple of months ago, I stood before you and said, let's not change the zoning. Instead, let's look at developing a rural road standard that could be applied in A5 and mitigate the cost of the road. Well, so I'm not against that, but it needs to be done the correct way. And that correct way isn't through a development agreement with one private party. What we need to do in the city is look at developing that using public works, engineering, administration, going through planning commission, going through public hearings, going through city council, again, public hearings. We need to do it right way so that it can be applied to applicable property throughout the city rather than just doing what almost looks to be a favor for one individual. Because my fear is you do it there, other people with similar property are going to have an expectation of the same. A rural road, we need to look at, I think a lot of things could go into effect. In A5 or A2, if homes are being clustered, I think a rural road makes more sense. If homes have a lot of frontage, it may make more sense than when you have an A2 lot that is very narrow but very deep, right? The whole sidewalk thing, one thing that we had brought up on that this road going up from 500 West would be a future connector road. Well, if we use that as a reason why the zoning should be changed to A2, and then we suddenly say, well, that connector road, that's no longer a factor, you can see why citizens are upset. You know, somebody used the term, oh, citizens are hostile. Can I say, I don't believe they are hostile. I think they are frustrated when they see this back and forth and not the consistency. If the road was needed for infrastructure, if it was needed as a connector road, and that's the excuse or the reason for A2, then we need to look at why we are changing things. Now, the mayor's probably looking, your time is up. Are my 3 minutes up? Okay. There is much more I could say. Also concerns about sidewalks, the bark. I know in our yard, we are replacing bark like every 3 years. It's constantly washing away. Once that's turned over to the city, it's us as citizens who end up paying for that upkeep. And that upkeep is continual, particularly on bark. Not sure that that's an answer. Concerns about ADA, concerns about safety. I mean, one thing was having that road so in the event of an emergency, people could get off the mountain. Well, what about that? I mean, is that no longer a factor? We wouldn't even have a proper sidewalk. The other concerns about this being a draft and really not even sure what's being proposed here at the end. But I would urge you to deny this. Let's not put the cart before the horse, back up the train, look at it, and let's do it the right way. Thank you.
Glenn Ames. I live on 4200 North Cul-de-sac. I've been there since 2017. They were framing my house during the eclipse. It was so cool to watch the moon or the sun come through these rafters and all these shapes. And feeling cold and ominous about my new home. Well, the ominous had come and gone because I had already gone through it. The shape of my house was not going to provide the 30-foot setback required. So I had to pay my architect to redesign my house to skinny it and make it longer. Well, I did that. And then we started building. And the inspector came again, and he came over and he goes, wait, you're 3 whole inches too close to the horse pasture. 3 inches too close to that rear property line. I had to push my fireplace into my bedroom to get that 3 inches instead of hanging out. So I lost some room on my, I'm just saying that I didn't ask for an exception. I took that beating and here I am 7, 8 years later, and I've come to love this house. It was the right thing in the end. One more thing I'd say is in 2018, a year after I moved in, there was a road project that came through this area, and there was a property in that corner area that had an expensive upgrade to the landscaping, curb and gutter, sidewalk to make it right, to make it up to our standards. And that cost the taxpayers money. I get it. That's how it works. But I can almost predict the future. Is this really rural or not? If it's not rural, I can almost predict that we're going to have to come through and pay for curb and gutter and sidewalk because these kids are going to be in the street. Somebody's going to get hit. And we're going to realize we're not in rural Utah after all. We're going to have to upgrade it and the taxpayers will be on the hook. Last thought is that if we are going to have rural roads, that we do need, like Far said, we need to be consistent. We need to dig in our heels and say, this is it. Everything north of 4300 north from here to the end of time is going to have biodegradable sidewalks, rolled asphalt, curb and gutter, or whatever the rural road standard is, 2 inches asphalt sitting on bare ground. I don't know, but we just need to be consistent. And are we prepared for that future in Pleasant View? If so, then so be it. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it needs to be. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, Brad Jones, 540 West, 4300 North. I just have a question and I know you can't answer. So the definitions of the urban road, I am not familiar with, but my question is about the water sewer, the water drainage coming off that. I realize if there's a main road with curb and gutter and everything, there's water collection going down into the storm sewer. This is a property that I've dealt with flooding with for years at my house because of the piping that's done up above. It's nothing new. That's just my question is if the urban thing goes through, is there any storm sewer drain system set up with that? So I realize you can't answer, but anyway, that's a question.
Well, the answer
Thank you.
is yes. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move to item 2, consent items. Minutes of May 27th, 2025, June 10th, 2025, and June 12th, 2025. And 2B is the bills of Pleasant View City. Any changes, corrections, or questions?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent items.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, motion by Marriott, second by Arrington. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Item 3 is a development agreement. Discussion and possible action to consider adopting a development agreement with Valpal for the Stofferson Ranch subdivision located at approximately 540 west, 4300 north. Start to Andrea.
Okay, so I put together just an analysis of the staff comments that came in regarding the development agreement that's on your agenda for consideration tonight. This is the concept plan that went out in your packets. It consists of 13 lots, has road connectivity with 500 west and 4400 north. It does include a shared detention basin with the adjacent property owner at 415 west, 4400 north. The developer is proposing a rural road section on 500 west. A BART trail is included connecting Wadman Park to 4400 north, and a 5-foot asphalt trail on 500 west from 4400 north. I apologize, 4400 north to 4575 north. First of all, I just wanted to kind of discuss development agreements. The city is allowed by state statute to allow a development agreement for a master plan development, plan unit development, annexation. And Utah land use, it defines this as when a developer wishes discretionary approvals from the municipality or county to be involved. So this allows you to go outside of the current code. That's what a development agreement is for. As per our code, if you do consider allowing the clustering, we do require a development agreement. So if you're going to allow clustering of the lots, the development agreement does have to be approved. Not this particular one, but a development agreement will have to be in conjunction with the subdivision. The first item I have, and I just wanted to reference in your development agreements that you have, this will be on page 2. And it's item 1.1 D. And this is on the density calculation. The developer is proposing 13 lots, taking the development acreage of 26.33 divided by 2 for two acres, which would give him 13 lots. The staff notes is that generally the calculation for that the calculation of your overall acreage does not count your roadways and your detention basins. So the calculation by staff comes out to be 11.7. No, sorry, 11.5. But if we allowed him to calculate the extra 6 feet that we propose on 500 west from a 60-foot right of way to a 66-foot right of way, that would allow 11.7 lots. The next one is also on page 2, 1.1 G. This is regarding the BART trail that would be constructed from Wadman Park and connect up to 4400 north. The staff notes on this is that the existing utility easement is not an access or trail easement, and the developer can't commit to constructing and dedicating this without permission from the current property owner. Our suggested change to the language is that the developer shall construct trails and sidewalks as per the road cross sections as further described in section 1.2, which is, yeah, sorry. Section 1.2, which we'll get into a lot of those issues as we go along, or what staff comments were on those. In the subdivision layout, under section H, the sensitive lands protection, the language says that the subdivision layout shall take into account the surrounding environment, particularly sensitive lands, wetlands, and ecologically sensitive areas. The staff would just ask you to consider with the clustering, if the intent of clustering is to allow those areas to stay preserved. And we're showing that a lot of that area will be taken out with that green section right there with all the trees. So that's not preserving the natural landscape as it is right now. So staff is just indicating that you just may want to take that into consideration with the intent of a clustering subdivision. Okay, so this is where we get into the roadways. On 4300 north, the way that it's written in the development agreement, sorry, just making sure I have this. The only thing added to this is that he dedicate the necessary right of way across there and then strike out the language, including the 8-foot wide sidewalk, as it doesn't conform with our current standards. So
What is sidewalk 6? 5. 5?
with curb,
6 inches, 6 feet. 6 feet. Perfect.
So if it's up
6
against.
feet off
curb,
the
it's 6
bat.
feet. If it's got a mole strip or a whatever.
Arc strip is 5.
Yeah, park strip, thank you. Park. Okay.
so the staff recommendation on that is just to have him follow what is currently along 4300 North.
Which currently would be 6 feet.
On 500 West. The staff notes are that the developer's width of 500 West doesn't conform with the city's master street plan. The master street plan calls for a 66-foot wide right of way, and the developer is proposing a 60-foot right of way. And then this up in the top left-hand corner is the cross-section of the rural road detail, which is Exhibit C that would be attached to the development agreement. So staff is recommending that he followed the detail in this exhibit. And then also staff is recommending that he install a trail the full length of 500 West rather than going from 4400 North to 4575 North. It would expand the entire length from 4300 North to 4575 North. And that's. in
So
this
I
language
think
here.
we need to make a couple of notes as we're going for the council, and that's some of the things that need to be discussed. One is, sidewalk versus a trail. What's most applicable here? So that's just one thing I think that we need to talk about, so.
Is it time to talk about that now, Mayor, or do you want to have the whole presentation?
Let's let her do a presentation and come back to that. I've been making some notes. Hopefully you are.
So this just shows the recommended language change on 500 West is to make it a 66-foot right of way. Strike the language for the pavement and curb width and default to the exhibit.
I think
Instead.
that's another note, okay? It's on the master plan of 66 feet. The city would have to purchase 6 feet. Okay, which is $50,000. Is going right?
66 foot is the standard of the.
No.
66 foot is the standard for what is called for on the master street plan.
But they want 60 feet. So
Correct.
why would?
The extra 6 feet,
Uh-huh.
because it's above and beyond the. Yeah, we'll let's cover that as, like I said, don't talk about each one of these now. Finish your presentation. We'll talk about each one of those.
Okay, and then the other change was the trail requirement to go the full length of 500 West rather than just the portion from 4400 North. On 4400 North itself, he's proposing a 60-foot right of way extending from its current terminus there at the east side of his property westward to 500 West. And to match that to what's currently on 4400 North. Staff recommends that the right of way be extended to the terminus of his, or to the end of the property on the west side to accommodate for future development, not to install a road, but just to dedicate a right of way there. So the change in language from his to staff recommendation is add to the west boundary of the subdivision on the right of way, and then to construct from its current terminus to 500 West.
It's like her-
That's correct.
That dark area,
West.
Correct.
and they're gonna address that.
On 4575 North, there was in the draft that went back and forth language about constructing that portion of 4575 North. The developer did omit that from his proposed agreement. Staff recommends that the south half of 4575 North adjacent to the subdivision, that lot there, I can't read it, 8 or 9, be improved to the rural road section as the exhibit. This one looks like a really big section, but the changes in this entire section were fairly minor. do you guys want a minute to read through this? Okay, so this is under section 1.4, which is gonna be on page 4 of your development agreement. So it goes through the subdivision dedication, the wetlands and the landscape requirements.
Or what changes are you suggesting?
Okay, so that's on my next slide here. So the changes are highlighted there. In his open, perpetual open space agreement, he added the words agriculture and educational, into the uses for the perpetual open space. Staff is recommending that those be removed as they are not in, city code under open space. And he also had added outbuilding maintenance, which there would be no outbuildings allowed to be constructed on open space according to code. So staff suggests that that also be removed. And then in the wetlands section, it's just the added language of protected with easements under the wetlands. And then regarding paragraph C on the previous slide regarding water systems, the city hasn't yet confirmed with Pine Bay Water Systems on the requirements or restrictions for that area. Are we good to move on? Okay.
Sure.
Regarding the water infrastructure, there's a paragraph in there about the 500 West. The existing line being replaced with a new 10-inch PVC line. And staff comments are that since a detailed subdivision layout showing the existing water line and proposed road rights of way and infrastructure improvements have not been developed, the city is unable to determine whether or not the existing water line should be replaced. Staff recommends omission of this section at this time. If replacement of the water line is determined warranted during the review of the improvement plans, then an amendment to this development agreement or a subsequent agreement could be entered into. On the next one, 2.2, which is stormwater, there was minor language added to it to the very end of his proposed language, just to add per the city's development, design and construction standards.
Hey, Mayor, can we go back to that? This is the first time I'm hearing that we're going to replace that line. Is that the water line, 2.1A?
Yeah, you go back.
Is that,
Or reimburse the developer?
we are going to replace the existing water line?
So the discussion about changing it was if you were doing the standard road section, it would most likely end up in it. So we were planning on updating it before you put that full road section. But since we moved to the rural road section, narrower with the asphalt, you might end up in the ditch, sort of like the water line placement on upper 900. And so with all the other burdens in the water system, we might use those funds elsewhere if that water main ends up in the ditch section, so that rural to allocate those funds elsewhere.
So you
But
can't make that decision until you see the exact road alignment and the engineering and everything.
correct.
So you're basically suggesting that at the point we get the engineering drawings and everything, we make the decision.
Yes, and
It
then,
does need to be replaced soon.
It's a 50-year-old water line,
Yeah.
correct?
yeah, and some of the older when you're not undermining street sections, because that's your big cost in breaks, is repairing all other infrastructure around it that's done in the break.
So you're saying you wouldn't move it outside of this, if it was a standard road width, you'd have to move one.
So if you were we probably wouldn't fit if you were doing the standard, you'd end up under asphalt, because that's our standard location. And yes, and then the cost to replace that in 5 or 10 years would outweigh any benefit of not doing it now. So that's when we've done it. So if this ends up in the ditch, that's where it is on Pleasant View Drive. It's an older main, and your cost to repair those breaks is significantly reduced because you're just in the dirt shoulders of those ditches.
All right. So more to come on that.
Yes, and we have mechanisms, we've done several in previous subdivisions where you enter into agreements and the developer's paying for everything that is required to make them buildable lots with services and hydrants. And then the city covers anything we're doing for maintenance purposes. So there's a vault most likely we would do no matter what, because of its size and the timing, but the main, though, we'd probably defer.
Cause I thought part of the reason we were doing this is, first of all, to obtain an actual right of way. And just have the road over the water line, not really move it or replace it.
So we'll end up in the right of way still, but as the goal, but not
I'm
necessarily.
sorry, Mayor, I just, does it-
That was the argument with these properties that we would get the road. So we'd have to-
then I don't know the standard. We can argue about that, but I just didn't know that we were going to. I know that was an old line and it really. Have we done any repair on that line? At all?
Not on the field that I'm aware of.
Okay, anyway, sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
You lower your mic, please, speak.
Yes,
Sorry. Were we okay on the stormwater addition there?
Okay, or.
I mean, okay with moving on past it.
With your
Sorry.
Explanation?
Okay with my recommendation or explanation to it. Staff comments that cover from the general provisions to the end of the agreement. There. Sorry. There are several sections that haven't been addressed or reviewed by the attorney. None of the agreement, as far as since I've been here, has been reviewed by legal. So that would have to happen at some point anyway.
So this agreement hasn't been reviewed by legal?
Well,
No.
we haven't kind of finalized it yet.
I have asked legal certain questions regarding it during during the process of going back and forth. But these sections, on section 4, staff recommends adding a term or expiration of the agreement, which I would defer to legal on.
hey,
Um,
Mayor, one other question on stormwater.
Yeah.
Aren't we doing away with a stormwater detention basin and piping it to this? Is
That's
that
the proposal? Yeah.
proposal? Is that in here? I don't see that.
So
So
it'd just be a pond it would have a detention pond at the bottom parcel B.
And that will be sufficient to handle the upper.
That's the sizing requirements
There.
they're calling out.
Okay, perfect. That's fine. I just want to make sure.
3
It just-
C1.
3C1,
It just have your underground system like a standard right away.
yeah,
It would be the open ditch down and then divert into the pond.
because we still are gonna do away with the one that's up above, correct?
That's what they're
That's what's
proposing.
proposed.
But that
Are
was,
are we
We're
good with
not.
that? Are we
No.
good with that?
They would just need to size it in
Okay.
with the new development.
Perfect.
As long as they can make it work and size it accordingly.
Okay, make sure that is in this agreement, that is,
But you're saying do away with the one up above, you're talking about the one above one apart, right?
Above one part.
Yes.
Okay.
and then we'd have to maintain only one instead of two, which was nice. If they size it for the right thing, which I
Yeah,
guess that's what
which says they will design it
perfect.
in 1.3.
Sorry.
B1.
Go on to 4, sorry, Andrea.
You're fine. So section 8 is just adding some contact information for the other party listed as a part of the development agreement. Section 10 would be to add the attachment for the open space preservation easement. And then, sorry,
Section 9? Shown section 10.
section 9 is just the exhibits, to the agreement.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
And then staff also recommends adding a clause as to whether or not this agreement is transferable.
Which will defer to the attorney to. but-
is the suggestion that they would like it to be transferable, or you wouldn't, or staff wants it not to be transferable?
Doesn't matter. It's just,
That's up to the
we
city.
need to determine whether it is.
Some additional staff comments, is that the council consider whether this proposal meets the intent of the cluster subdivision ordinance as a whole, which is where we talking about preservation of open space and the natural landscape. The council could consider allowing for the calculation of the lots by using the base residential right-of-way width of 60 versus the master planned width of 66 feet, which would put it at 11.7 lots. Have the previous iterations of the agreement included the city's appraisal and purchase of the additional 6 feet right-of-way, which we covered a little earlier. The open space preservation language proposed by the developer includes uses not listed in the city ordinances, which was the agricultural and educational. It allows for the building construction, which we suggested removing any outbuilding or any type of building construction. And it would prohibit, the way that the language is in there, it would prohibit that right of way or any extension ever going in from 4400 north to the west. So we would recommend that the open space language be changed, or those parcels be divided to allow for that right of way, or that a right of way be recorded across all the way to the west side. And then just as a side note, which we've also covered, is that staff is currently developing the proposed rural road section, which hasn't been adopted by city yet. Lot of information. We're open to questions. With the development agreement, it would be staff's recommendation that this is a starting point for the city council to consider what concessions the city feels are appropriate with the developer. And what's not, what you're not comfortable doing.
I think Matt is here to address questions and
Mayor, can I make?
tell us why they want to do, but so as we go through it, we have
yeah.
questions of the developer. I think, well, Val's on Zoom and Matt is Matt here? Okay, Matt's here.
Can I make a couple comments,
Sure.
Mayor? I'll start this off. I really feel we need a sidewalk there at least on the east side of the road. Standard width, could come down from the north to the south. And I think we can do away with the path. I don't think that's, as Julie talked about, I think it's just kind of a waste. The reason they did that, I think, is to have the filling of the Wadman Park going through it. I still want to have access to the park, and I think that's still in the plan. And that can be the softer, natural material, which is part of our park. And we have access kind of along the east side of that subdivision, the subdivision, also at area that we can put a path in that gets from 4300 up as well. So anyway, I'd love to see a sidewalk put there and do away with an asphalt path or the bark path coming down the side. I don't think that that's necessary. But the safety of the children, the safety, where we haven't had sidewalks, we've regretted it. And so we have to have a sidewalk there. The width of the road will be, what is it, 28 feet, 30 feet? The actual asphalt road?
The asphalt that the developer is proposing is 28.
28.
The staff recommends 32.
Okay, so I don't know. I mean, we want to have a wide enough road where, it's not going to be some narrow thing there, but I think the 60-foot right of way is fine for me personally. I don't think we need the extra 6 feet. Especially I don't want to buy it. I don't want to spend money on it as well. And I think personally, I would like to allow them the 13 lots instead of the 11. I think, we can calculate a bunch of stuff in and out, but I think that's what we talked about too, having that and the cluster aspect of it as well. I think that fits really well with the open space. I think it was a good decision that we made originally to have this be a kind of a planned development and not just have half-acre lots or, just hundreds of homes in there, but it's a nice fit, especially with the open space, and have that dedicated to the city or, to that, not to the city, but to the dedication of open space. I really like that. So those are the things that I would love to have. And I'd love to hear from the developer on the sidewalk. How do you feel? Or Mayor, I don't know what your thoughts is on that.
We can, but if you want to take it one at a time, let's talk about sidewalk versus path.
Can everybody hear
Are
me?
we going?
I just,
we could go through each of these things and talk about them individually, but I actually feel very strongly that we need to develop a rural road standard in the first place and then look to that to have people apply for that and then follow that standard. I think that this is a lot of work to make something work, to be less expensive for the applicant. And that's not a reason to do things in the best interest of the city, in my opinion. I know it has to have a development agreement to cluster anyway, but all of the other standards don't need to be in there. To clustering, you might have to adjust things here and there, but not like this. The standards are put in place so that so the residents don't, when they take over the infrastructure, don't have that strong impact or that, hard impact of having to maintain roads. One of the biggest things that we have in this city is roads that are falling apart, including mine. And so why would we do this? What is the why? If it's good, then let's go through the process of public hearings and have the input of the residents and planning commission and city council to develop a good standard that is good for certain places and those to apply. This seems like, what can we make fit for this particular property so that it's not so expensive? I realize that it's a large piece of property, it's wonky, and we would have to pay our fair share. I've talked enough with the ombudsman's office to learn about takings and what an exaction means and all of that. That's not unusual. They could dedicate our share that we would have to take over and then put the infrastructure in. However, I don't think this is appropriate. I think it's fair to the residents of the city to be doing this for an individual applicant of creating a new standard without having the standard. Those are my thoughts. And if I could vote right now, I would say, let's start over and just have them develop at A2 instead of going through this and trying to make something work that doesn't. Those are my thoughts.
Dave?
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, this is just a first look at this, right? I mean, we're really kind of just trying to get this molded together, but I agree that the clustering is a good option. I think it's something that we could do, which required a development agreement. And I think that's good. I like what Steve said about the 13 lots. I think that's doable. I am really hung up on why we would not put a road in that's not to our current standards. We definitely need the sidewalk. We definitely, Julie talked about it earlier. We are connecting this road. There was a plan to connect it from the top and originally. And I realize there's money involved in that, but I think why would we make that kind of concession on a road that we believe is going to be a connector at some point? The open space, everything like that. I like a lot of the stuff that staff's come back with and some of the wording. There's so many different things we need to go through. I would like to spend 10 minutes on each one of those, discuss them and go through them. I don't know that we'll have time to do that, but I'm hesitant because I'd like to make this work, but I in my mind, I just don't think it's the right thing to do to make concessions on the roads itself. So.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Sure.
Clarify something. I know other than the width of the road, we're not the depth of the asphalt depth and the construction of we're not giving up anything on that, are we?
Dana.
I mean, those standards for the road, building of the road, with the exception of the width, 32 versus 28 or whatever it is, the construction of the road is to our standard, right?
Well, it's a standard we're creating to mitigate that issue.
Well, but what, I mean,
Depth.
the depth, I mean, the construction of the road is
Yeah.
those, I mean, we're not just putting a half an inch of asphalt down and calling it a country road, because we have dirt roads right now in the city that used to be asphalt roads. But we're, yeah, there's a,
It's ribbon curve.
yeah, that's fine.
Hold your mic down, please.
I see what you're saying. I guess to me, again, why are we creating this? What is the why? Why? Why are we creating a new standard? We already have public standards. It's linked on Jones Civil's page. You
Yeah.
can go there, tells you the width of the road, tells you the curb and gutter, tells you the sidewalk, tells you all of those
Did,
things.
did we present this or did they present the road?
Well, I believe as Ms. Farr mentioned, it was brought up in planning
But
commission.
it wasn't like a directive saying, hey, let's create this standard.
Because I think
Right.
that's where it came
And
from.
Unfortunately, the rural road section development predates me.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the origination
I
was.
don't have a problem
let's do it.
revisiting a rural road, but it's just. Well, anyway, I don't want to get into debate with you, Sarah, here, but I mean, the standard of the road, you know, to have a truck or cement truck going over a road, that has to be to our standard, and I don't think that's in question.
So
Is it?
it's an updated version of what essentially is happening on Upper 900 to beef it up. And it came about the exactions discussions. So it started with looking at the LID road that's a movement they're putting in place, and then it evolved during the exaction discussions into the rural road section. So the
So
road base, your asphalt depth, it's a beefier, closer to the current standard to try to address that. So you don't end up with another upper 900.
yes, I mean, we don't want a substandard road, and maybe that is the definition. Maybe we're just arguing over the language of what a rural road means.
They're trying to create a new standard that we don't have, I should say. It's not following, Tyson, am I right? It's not
It's not
following
standard, no.
our current standards that we have. None of this is. So they're creating a new standard without creating a new standard, if that makes sense.
Because, I mean, there's a lot of different roads in Pleasant View width-wise, and I don't.
Pre-standard, we adopted our current standards like
Okay.
20 years ago. So
Current versions from 16, I believe.
yeah,
with some
2015.
amendment.
So yeah, we have lots of roads that were pre-standard, but since then we've done studies and whatever that says, hey,
Again, I-
longevity of these roads.
I
we need
definitely
to
do not want to have
increase them.
something substandard there. Not what I'm, but anyway. Go ahead.
And
Yeah, so a couple things for me. I don't like making decisions on the fly like this. Like I haven't seen this information long enough to be able to absorb it. And so like for me, I'm like, whoa, like a lot of this has changed since we, got our packet. So that part I'm feeling uncomfortable with. Also, I don't, and maybe I need to ask the developer, but I don't feel like this is clustering. Like maybe I don't understand what the open space is. And maybe I should have them point that out to me, but like, are we really preserving the open space like we intended the clustering to be? For me, that's a big question mark. Like in my mind, I'm saying no, unless I'm not looking at it correctly. So, I do want to keep the connector road. I don't want to do the bark path. I do want to keep a sidewalk there for kids who walk to school or the bus stop. So those things are important to me.
what do you mean connector road?
So like the one that, like dedicating the spot that was gonna go west and then at the top. Yeah, it looks like they have one at the top there, right?
Do they have are they?
Are you talking about the heavy line one that goes over to the existing parcel?
So one of them is the
Yes.
dedicated spot where we wouldn't actually put the road in, but we would just dedicate that to be a future road. That's important to me.
Stops at the top. Doesn't.
And it doesn't connect at the top, but it could.
Could it?
Well, we don't have.
Well,
a
it's
plan
part of the
for
development agreement.
concepts.
The staff is recommending to connect it, so.
Yeah,
Connect. Stop.
that's something I
Connecting
look to look at.
4575 as well
does
as
connect.
Okay.
43.
4575.
4575.
Okay, like I said, I just haven't even had enough time to absorb it, right? Like, so another concern there. So let's see, what else? Yeah, I don't really care about the bark path. I don't think that's gonna add anything to it, but I also feel like, if we are gonna mess the road, we are gonna come up with a rural road standard, then I feel like we need to dig into that and adopt it and, just make sure that we've got exactly what we want. So we don't have to change it from subdivision to subdivision if that's what we want. So, but I'd prefer this not even to be a rural road standard here. I prefer it to be a full road. So I just think we got to stick with the standards we have with some, clustering there. So that's what I got.
Okay, anybody else?
Oh, I have one more question though. So as far as water goes, so like we said that we haven't, Pineview hasn't been approved there yet. Is that right?
Part at the bottom, I think. Isn't that right? Part at the bottom.
So
Type
it-
in where-
I
Well,
think it's above.
I mean, they couldn't build until they had will serve letters to do.
That's what I was gonna ask is like, if they don't get approval from Pineview, then, I mean, the whole thing's scrapped at that point?
Yeah.
It is. And if they don't have, I mean, do we have enough culinary up in that area?
We have a big line.
Yeah, that would be
So the
evaluated.
culinary is not an issue, but the Pineview could be an
We
issue.
we have to, our capital facilities plan because it was based on A5 zoning. And now we've,
Well, there's
Increase
13
the
lots
density.
instead of 6, so I'm not sure we'll have to do our capital facilities plan.
We would look at it, but yes, ERUs. We would be fine. That's,
So I have some questions for the developer.
we have to.
Okay.
focus.
Matt, they got some questions for you.
Val is also on Zoom.
I would love to speak if you can hear me.
Val, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you
So
hear
Matt,
me?
will you explain to me, like, what's that?
See muted.
Change the Zooms. Oh, there it is. It's on. Never mind.
Can you just explain to me which ones are lots, which ones are open, and also what are the size of the lots? Like you can't, it's hard to tell.
You
Okay,
bet.
I'll just, so A,
You can take that mic right there.
this,
It detaches.
You can take that
like-
mic.
It's like you're singing on stage. Take it with you.
Yep.
so parcel A is the proposed layout does not include 4400 north heading to the west side of the property. So this is an add-on that, is this staff's recommendation, right? Okay. So parcel A, perpetual open space, is this area here. And it's about a little under 6 acres. Something to note, this area right here is kind of a wetland. Specifically right here is a wetland. And this is unbuildable area. So the idea of this subdivision was to keep the open space in the area that was not buildable. And that's kind of the reason for the clustering, to allow for this area to be perpetual open space. But to answer your question, this area right here, which is a little under 6 acres, is the open space that's proposed.
Okay.
but not with the proposed language with that ag element and
The proposed language doesn't have that in.
with the proposed agriculture language.
Yeah.
For educational.
Okay. Stop
Staff,
some of that.
staff recommends omitting the education and agricultural aspect of the open space.
As well as
And I'm
the
not
outbuildings.
really sure I understand that. If agriculture is not open space, then it's just weeds. I mean,
Well, it's trails, it's parks.
I think, yeah, that's gonna be weeds if it's not maintained as,
Well, it's dedicated to the city,
well, I
right?
don't know what their plan is. You can tell us what your plan is for that. Agricultural.
There are more than one option on how the open space is dedicated. Dedicating to the city is one option. So it doesn't have to be dedicated to the city following the clustering requirements.
What do our ordinances say? Do we have anything that dictates that?
How it's recorded.
How it's dedicated?
I would have to look into
What
that.
guides our dedication? We do, Dana? What, do you mind if I ask Dana a question?
Sure, go for it.
What is the language for our dedicated open space? Okay. What are uses in dedicated open space? Recreation and,
space.
Preserved for recreation and or open space. That has no provisions for agricultural, educational, or building purposes.
I don't think we want that, to be the cities. I think we,
trails, I don't know.
I think we, because then we'd have to maintain it. I think it just needs to be dedicated open space where it's not gonna be built upon.
But
It's
you
just-
can't have buildings on it and you can't farm it.
Why can't you?
Why can't you farm it?
Then it's not open
Well,
space.
of course it is.
For whom? The developer, not the
For
city.
anybody, it's just, it's open space.
We can't go on a farm.
I don't see, it's just that you can't build on it. You can't build a lot on it, but it's open
Space
space.
is supposed to be used for the community.
I'll read what it
Not
says in the ordinance for the clustering. It says recreation and or open space areas to be permanently reserved shall be improved, landscaped and maintained in accordance with a plan approved by the planning commission and city council. If the recreation open spaces are to remain in their natural state, this too shall be approved by the planning commission and city council. That's the current ordinance for clustering.
How big are each of those lots? When I pictured a cluster, this is not what I pictured in my mind. I'm just curious, how big are each of those lots?
They range from the top two lots are 3 acres. Those are the very north ones. And then I think lot 8's a couple of acres. And then the rest of them range from 3/4 to like 1.25 acres, right around there.
Is the site plan included in this development agreement? So this is when we would be approving the site plan as well? No, just curious.
No, they would still have to go through a subdivision approval process.
But it would be contingent upon the development agreement as well.
The clustering portion of it, yes.
Or any
They
other
they
things
could
that
come
we
in and
approve.
develop it as strictly A2 without a development
But,
agreement, just
like,
as a subdivision.
The language in the development agreement with the standards and everything else. So when they go for their site plan and planning commission, it will revert to the
Yeah, basically,
development
that's why they
agreement.
want this
Anything that
first,
I
before they
like
spend all the
the
money
cluster,
to
yes.
develop a plan. You know, they want to develop a plan according to what we've agreed to entertain.
So my opinion of clustering is there's 13 buildable lots there, and they could be 1/4 acre, they could be, you know, but there's 13 of them or 11 or whatever we decide on. And there's no more. You can't have any more than that, but you can have, you know, patio homes, I mean, you can have whatever you wanted, you can cluster it, but it's just, it's the buildable lots that we've approved there, not the size of the lot.
I
But
believe.
then your
that-
ratio is unproportional because they have 13. It doesn't equal A2 anymore. It's a
Yes,
higher
it's-
density. No, because are they counting the right of way?
Well,
Yes.
that's yet to
So
be,
then it's
that's
not-
yet to be determined, but the
With the
26,
13 lots, yes.
26 point whatever it is,
26.33.
26, whatever, that's 13 lots. And so you start dividing it out with all the roads and all the different things, then that's where they're getting to 11.
Correct.
I guess we need to decide, oh, well, we definitely need to decide that. That's part of this as well. But I don't know.
The clustering, the benefit to the city and the community for clustering is the open space.
Yeah.
That's the benefit. And the open space in this proposal is strategic. I mean, we're proposing open space where you've got areas that if you went just straight A2 zoning, then every bit of this would be developed,
Yeah.
right? Then you've got people saying, well, I've got a lot there. I'll figure out how to dewater this. I'll figure out how to, you know, what the benefit to the community is we are preserving this area where we have deer, we have grass, we have trees. I mean, this becomes an area that will not be developed ever. That's the benefit to the community for open space and clustering. Not necessarily gaps between lots, which I think we're kind of envisioning, but mostly preserve. Okay, sorry. Gotcha. But this is, I mean, that's the benefit to the community is, you know, perpetually leaving this open and having, you know, area that's not developed, not built on.
And so that, I mean, and we've had this property come up 3 or 4 times in my lifetime where they wanted to strictly RE20.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know what that, I went to Ogden High, so my math's not very good, but 26, would that be 60 or 50 some odd lots?
Yeah.
So 26 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
52?
50 lots.
50 lots. We absolutely didn't want
53.
that. That didn't fit in what we wanted in that place. And so when we discussed this to changing the distinction to you know, to 2 acre lots, we decided that 13 lots would be appropriate for this with an open space. And you know, we decided on whether we want to take that over or dedicate to the city or just leave it. if they're farming it, I personally don't care about that. Cut some hay, cut some grass. I don't want it to be just a big. But these are gonna be higher end lots. I think they're gonna demand that something be done there, and maybe we put that in, that we do want to have it be kept up or cut down as
Right.
per our standard of any lot that's around. You can't have stuff growing.
Yeah, it can't be a fire hazard. and
fire hazard,
It's
and
gotta
so-
be maintained to some level and it's gotta be used by the public.
Yeah, but again, and this is just a first step. I understand that. So. Anyway, I've said what I kind of want to see as part of my one part of this fifth thing, and I think, I don't know, I'd like to hear what you think about that. What are your thoughts on sidewalk versus path? I mean, from a developer standpoint.
Either one of those works with us. And we're fine going from 4,300 with a sidewalk or a path all the way up to 4,575.
The sidewalk makes sense. You have to have a sidewalk.
And that's either one of those.
And cement, concrete, that's, with whatever standard width we have, was it 5 foot width?
It's
5 foot width? That makes sense, because that's gonna last forever. Asphalt path's that's gonna be on the city to do something in a few years. It's gonna freeze and thaw, and it's gonna be a mess.
What are your thoughts if we just have you adhere to the current standards that we have?
Well, which is a full curb and gutter asphalt. I think there's a reason that, so Dana, correct me, there's been a lot of time spent on getting this rural road cross section to this point. There's been a lot of discussion, talk, engineering, and getting it. Granted, I realize it's not gone through a process of getting a standardized. And I understand where you guys are coming from with that, but I don't think the final, rural road is going to be much different than this in a major way. Maybe it's a little wider, maybe there's a few different things, but, and I guess Dana's the one that we should ask, where did the process to get to this point, for this proposed cross section? And maybe Mayor Call can speak to that, and Val probably should be able to chime in here. He's been involved with this from the beginning. Can you hear us, Val?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Matt, can you hear me?
We can't hear.
We're not able to hear you. I don't know if you're on mute.
No, I'm not on mute, but maybe you can put your can you put your
Fixed like 5 times, but
of-
still has.
Yeah, we can hear you.
can you put your phone
Kind
up
of
if
back
I
to the
call you?
discussion of Why are we trying to do? a
Call
rural
Matt
road?
Montano mobile.
Is it cheaper? Is that why?
Well, not necessarily. You have to hire an excavator to build a swell all the way down the side. You have to put a concrete CMP pipe at each entrance. There is advantage to a rural road. You're letting the water recharge along the way rather than just capturing it the whole way in a concrete pipe. So this is allowing the shed to work its way. This is present. This is.
Well,
He's calling.
Hey, Val, do you want to
Yes.
try to?
Yeah, put the phone up to the mic if you can.
Okay, I can.
Can everybody hear me?
Right? Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So the reason for the rural road was to try and capture the watershed. And so the only difference between this standard road and this road is the stormwater. Same road base, same depth of asphalt. The curb and gutter is going to be a ribbon curb instead of a 2-foot curb. And that goes into the swell. The swell then has a chance to recharge the water, which was important to the city. It was important to the community. And then all of those bioswells find their way into the retention pond. So, using that study, we're trying to use the principles of the study that the city had commissioned to put it into this plan. And there's a lot of moving parts. You're trying to combine detention ponds. We've been able to do that. Trying to have some trail connectivity from Wadman Park. We've been able to do that. We're putting a bark trail over that so that the city can If they have to maintain their sewer and storm drain, they don't have to pull up asphalt. So we tried to connect 4400 so it looks just like, you know, the neighboring Mount Majestic. There's a real desire to have every road that possibly could come through this 26 acres, and financially you just can't do it. And so you have to say, what could we do? Could we get the 500 west? Could we get the 4400 west? Yes, we can. And this is how we do it. I'm just fine with having a sidewalk on one side. It would be duplication to have a sidewalk and a trail. So we can have a sidewalk on one of the sides of the road all the way from 4300 to 4575. Makes total sense. A lot of the commissioners' input was that way, and I think that's fine. We actually, in order to try and make this work, needed to adjust some of the parcel sizes. So on this exhibit C, I believe, has the you know, the concept. It does not include any 4575 going to the east. The current dimensions of that parcel start below that eastward potential future road. So all that we can commit to for Matt and I is 500 west and 4400 north. The ask from the staff for the 4400 to go to west is going through wetland. It doesn't fit the master plan recommendations, and the property owner to the, you know, to the west of us is saying, hey, 2 acre is not dense enough. I would like to go for a higher density. Well, that just opens up the can of worms that this piece of property has been shot down, you know, 4 or 5 times, as Steve mentioned. So why would you want to open that up as a council to where, you know, they're wanting to get some higher density, even more dense than the 2 acres on the western part? And, you know, if that were to take place, and so for 4 or 5 times this property's approached half acre and the property to the west gets it, then that would be unequal treatment under the law. And that's not a good spot to be in for anybody. So we worked really hard as, you know, the Development Review Committee, gotten input from, you know, different community members and the city council to try and advance this cause. We think we're really close with this. The 13 lots would allow us to, you know, get the 60-foot wide right of way for 500 west. You're really not going to, there's really, I still yet to understand what the benefit of paying for an extra 6 feet would be to the city. It's just an added expense. The fire chief can get all of his big trucks up and down that 20-foot asphalt road. When we talked to him, he said, that's just fine. That's not a problem. We have that through most of the city. So that's why we have the 60-foot right of way on the 500 west. We have a nice connection over to 4400, so there's some connectivity. We've addressed the sidewalk, the open space. The only reason to put agriculture on there is horses are part of the maintenance plan. They just kept that, you know, pasture down so that it doesn't become a weed patch. It doesn't become a fire hazard. And it would qualify for green belt so that, you know, from a tax standpoint going forward, it's less from the county necessarily. So that's why the agriculture was listed. Fine not to have outbuildings, fine not to have education on that final version. So hopefully that's addressed the majority of the things, that the questions that you've had. Are there any other questions?
I know that we've talked about coming west on 4400, whatever it is, but does this have an extension going to 4400 north up to the east?
Yeah.
Is that in the?
It comes through and connects to 500.
Yes. So this would be.
Yeah.
Correct. So what about from here to there, that's not right now.
That exists.
Yeah, it's just,
So we-
comes right to the property line.
And this is what the city's putting demand in this.
Well, it's been asked by,
If that. But that, why we.
yeah, I don't know.
5 acre. And if they ever want to subdivide it. There's somebody who has a 5 acre lot there, and if they ever want to subdivide it and end up in A2, they need connectivity. Because we don't allow flag lots from 4,300 and there would be no way to access their property.
Mayor, I would like to, I think the biggest issue here is what, and I agree with Sarah, we need to have a definition of a rural road. I mean, in my mind, I'm seeing a lot of subdivisions and things out where the roads are just a nice road with, not a squared off curb and gutter, but I mean, we want to control the water. So I think we need to have a definition of what that is. I don't want to have a substandard road. I want to, we want to have the depths and all those things be per our standard with the asphalt and those types of things. I don't think that's in question. But what does that rural road represent? And what are we giving up? Is that a look? Which that's kind of what my understanding of it, it's kind of, it's a look. And if water can go off into the side, that helps recharge and all those different things. I don't know, but I think that those answers are here, right?
If not,
today.
I'd like to see that. I mean,
So
I understand what that
I would
means.
really love to
So what
see
we're giving
that.
up and what we're gaining. I mean,
Yeah.
he mentioned that the idea was
So
to gain.
I would like that brought back of a definition of a rural road. And if we need to fine tune that, I'd like to do it quick. I don't know what that is, but I'm fine with some things, but I don't want to give up on things either. We have to have a standard where the roads aren't going to fall apart. We just can't do anything cheap, but I don't think you want that either as a developer. So we,
Want any differences in the quality of the asphalt, the cement. You just want to get the storm drain back into all that water back in the ground and then finally find its way into a retention pond that's easy for the city to maintain. So this isn't a substandard road.
yeah,
This is the same quality of road with a different way to handle the water in an area where we're trying to preserve the water and give it a place to go.
So if I could chime in real quick, we have a process where we can actually develop an ordinance where you have staff bring it to planning commission and go through the public process, because the residents should absolutely have a say if they want this in their standards. One of the biggest costs that we have every year is maintenance of roads. And if this works, great. But if it doesn't, we should just put it in a development agreement and test it the waters that way. That's not how the public process works.
Well,
You go
this
through
was put in here. It was proposed formally to address the concerns that were expressed during the general plan change and the rezone about this being a water recharge area. So that's why that was like he mentioned, that's why that was built in here is very specifically for this area, because that was the problem. I mean, that was a concern that was raised by the public, is what, this is a recharge area. And we said we would address that as we moved forward. So that's where that came about.
So
And no, we didn't have a standard. Maybe we don't want a standard, but we probably want to address the recharge area, and
That could be part of the standard as well for certain areas. Planning commission,
I'm
city
saying that's
council
where
can
it
adopt that.
When I
Part of my
compare-
understanding as staff was from exaction discussions, because both that water recharge element can happen in a LID roadway and doesn't get into the right of way. And so the bigger push was
it was part of the exactions was too. Yeah.
Just for clarification, that was my understanding as staff,
What is LID? What is that?
the low impact development.
Okay.
So those are stormwater and what he's saying about recharge and all that is.
We already
Like
configure
about
that in
that.
our standard right now.
But yes, there's elements to deal with that in
Also,
multiple
just-
different ways.
is a benefit to the city having the storm sewer not under the road, is that gonna be better for us to be not under the road long-term? Or do we prefer it to be under the road? Like, what's best?
So historically, our projects have been to pipe ditches, and so to go back to these, we believe what we're building and in this standard is hopefully addresses some of those issues in the past with driveways and no, in areas that such as for 900, shoulder of Pleasant View Drive. No, the current standard is curb and gutter.
And under the road?
Wider asphalt sections. Cause that's the right of way in your asphalt widths. That's where that difference comes into play.
Cause I guess
So
just
you're-
in my mind, long-term, if it's easier to access a pipe that's not under the road, then maybe we look at putting this into a rural road standard. Where that would be beneficial to, you know, long-term. That's something we need to decide, right?
Yeah, there's certainly pros and cons to it, but
Right.
they're different for each utility.
And just like, just curious, what's the decision behind a rolling curve versus a normal curve? Like, why did you guys want that? Just
That's-
curious.
A
Ribbon
curb
curve.
that contains the water would not allow the water to go back into the ground along the side of the road.
Where the rolling one would.
That's right. So
The rolling
that?
is for the city
But
as
the whole
far as
area is
to
the-
deal with, so you don't have a scenario like 45-75. So if you've been up there, it's down to probably maybe a 12-foot wide asphalt section with gravel shoulders, because you start to lose your edge. So what this is, that it's being proposed is to address those issues, so you don't end up with those roadway
Gotcha.
types.
So you're tied with a ribbon of concrete 9 inches on each side.
Yes.
Okay,
And you're not collecting the water and making it run all the way down the roadway or entering into a storm drain.
got ya.
You're letting it shed naturally.
But that would be bermed on the sides of the road, so it's not going into properties or anything. It's kind of
Correct.
still
There-
controlled.
Yeah,
Could
there's a
could you possibly, and I don't know if I put this on you, I'd love to have some pictures. I know that these things are out there. In my mind, I can see them. These,
Can we put up the cross section of the?
well, but just in real life, I'd love to see some pictures, you know, and that's, I'm a visual person. And I know I can see it here and it's goes and then it's bermed on the sides so that it somewhat controls it. Cause if we have 100-year storm, which we get every other year here, rain event, you know, we want to make sure that flood control and all those different things are controlled. And as it comes down to 4,300, you know, we did have one off that property when we had big snow.
Right.
And it, you know, once we got it directed, it was okay in our existing stormwater,
Yeah,
but we
it's-
want to make sure that's good, but
It's just not.
anyway. I think, Mayor, can I make a motion or? I'd like to make a motion that we have some more detail on rural roads, what we're actually proposing here with, you know, just a little better idea. We can chew about it for just a minute versus, you know, we kind of know the standard there, I guess. I'm gonna table it. I'm gonna table it and bring this back. I don't know if we have, how long would it take to put together some information on the rural road? I personally don't think. I mean, I guess we do need to have a standard, but that's a long process of going through that. I don't- I
A
don't
standard
know.
would probably take 3 months.
That's how.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, all right.
I'd like some information on it. I'd just like to table it for
Okay,
tonight.
motion to table.
Second motion to table.
Motion by Gibson, second by Harrington. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You're opposed, table?
The reason I'm opposed is I'd like
Motion carries 3-1. Okay. Item 4, property acquisition contract discussion and possible action to approve a property acquisition contract with Kimley Horn to complete the Skyland Drive property acquisitions to allow Tammy Evans to finish the acquisitions. Andrew.
So previously we had a contract with Meridian and their employee Tammy Evans to acquire the properties along Skyline Drive. Tammy has left Meridian and is now employed with Kimley Horn. Meridian no longer provides the services that she was providing regarding acquisition. So we've consulted with our legal counsel and we are good to sole source out to finish out the Skyline acquisitions so that we don't lose any time on that through this, through Kimley Horn.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Any questions? Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve a property acquisition contract to Kimley Horn to complete the Skyline Drive property.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Arrington, second by Yuri. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5 is Public Infrastructure District. Discussion and possible action to consider adopting a policy statement regarding the establishment of public infrastructure districts, PIDs, Resolution 2025-K. Andurra. Turn that over to you.
I'm now Andurra for this item. No, it's fine. So this is just a policy establishing our procedures of when an applicant wants to establish a public infrastructure district. This is based a lot off of a template that comes from consultant and the state of Utah. Had legal review, made a couple minor changes on there. He did indicate that the fees that are called out in this policy will have to be adopted into the consolidated fee schedule if this is approved. We do currently have a letter of intent from the Far West Landing wanting to establish a PID for the Far West Pleasant View development that is going in north of Maverick. So I recommend that we have a policy in place so that we can follow something as they attempt to put that or develop a PID.
Is that only benefits between cities or is that just for a developer, any development? So
It doesn't really benefit the city at all. What it is to defer the cost of infrastructure for the developer and to put it on the property owner's taxes.
So is this just to develop a process? for
This is just
PIDs?
developing a process. This
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
approving a
We have to
PID.
see.
yeah, I just wondering how the benefits, what would be the benefits of it? And that's the developer.
And I think that once they start going through that process, that's what the city will have to weigh, is if there's a benefit to the city in developing that.
Okay.
Each project will probably, if they come forward, will be a little different, but we have received a notice of intent, so.
And, yeah, from another city. The notice of intent to do a PID from another city, right?
So
No.
this is for the property that is included in that development that
Okay.
is in our city boundaries, yes.
Yeah, that part, that's it.
Right.
So what we have is reviewed already. It meets this
Yeah.
state law and everything.
Yes,
So-
there was a couple minor edits that I was able to make before it went out.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, an entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the public infrastructure district as resolution 2025-K as in our packet.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, have a motion and a second. That's a motion by Marion, second by Yuri. Any further discussion? Roll call. Arrington,
Yes.
Gibson. Yes. Marriott. Nelson is absent, excused, and Yuri.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 4 voting yes. Item 6 is consolidated fee schedule. Discussion and possible action to amend the consolidated fee schedule for credit card fee and impact collection fee, resolution 2025-J.
Yes, so starting July 1st, the council approved a 2% credit card fee on all transactions. And then as we were setting things up, I got one, the Express bill, and they sent me the Visa rules. And not charged Visa credit cards on utility payments. So we're following them, so we can't do it on utility payments. So we started doing it everybody, but we have to do separate transactions. Anytime we do any kind of payment, we have to separately say, oh, there's 2%, then take another payment. So we're doubling up everything. And then we were talking about Founder's Day too. Down there at Founder's Day, we would have to be doing 2 transactions anytime somebody comes through. And so we're just saying, what if we just have, if originally it
Increase
was
the
a
fee.
2% charge on anything over $1,000, but what if we did it at 500? We would hit mostly like the building permits. And there would be a lot of those coming through. But on normal dog license and stuff, it would just be
That would be,
a transaction. And then entering them too, I guess they have to do 2 separate entries to get them into the cell. So that's our proposal. There's a credit card fee on
500 plus.
$500, non-utility payments. But then on 4, it would be $100. And that's how it was originally too.
So they'd still have the 2 transactions for court.
But they go through Express Bill and that's already set up. So she has to tell them, and but it will split it up on the courts. It's already set up to go through courts.
Okay. So I could be wrong on this, Laurie, but
What?
I think that I could be wrong on this, but I think you can charge a 2% handling fee instead of a credit card fee.
Convenience fee.
Yeah.
Rule on it, and the front page of their thing says, this is kind of the basic steps, and it says, there's, I don't know, and the one that I was talking to, goes, oh, it's small enough, you can get away with it, like.
Mayor?
Yeah.
not
Steve?
that thing.
Does 500, is that where you feel is the break?
Yeah, we kind of talked about 500.
Mayor, I'll make a motion
Oh, there's
that-
one more.
Impact fee.
Yeah, the impact fee. So we had, legal look at the Central Weaver Sewer agreements. Basically, what we were doing is one of the options, either you charge the person that's picking up the building permit and not you, and we don't charge Central Weaver Sewer. So, and what we had just changed it to is just, we just took it off until we have to do. Do you guys want to go back and just do the normal $10 on a building?
Yeah, go back to how we had
a
it.
building?
Yep.
Yeah.
So those are the options.
That's what.
So sorry, not to like go back to this, but even if it is over 500, could we do something like a handling fee or something like that so that we don't? Like, okay, well, first of all, back up. If we're doing 2% on something over 500, how is that
Still do
different?
transaction. It's not every day, 10 or 20 of them all day. Oh, that's another transaction. So we're done with what we're. on the
increasing the work for.
If we, for example, it's a salmon bake, we'd charge $12
Yeah.
and then we'd have to charge another one with
No,
that.
I understand
And then
that
they'd
part.
get- Then they get,
So just.
then they'd have another. and it's just-
Prices.
I understand that part, but so you're saying that like, I thought you're saying we can't even charge a 2%, no matter what it is, like,
Just on
No,
your.
on
just utilities.
Cannot.
Okay.
just,
Everything else she could, but we're just running into it, just duplicate work.
So
I mean,
just
we're
increase
keeping people on
the-
the phone longer.
So even on the plus 500, do you have to do 2 transactions or can you still, could you do the handling fee? And just get away with 1 transaction on 500 plus?
Call it a handling fee.
No, we would have to do some research on.
A service
the
fee.
definition part. There's so many out there, and if we get it wrong, the credit card people can say, we're not gonna have you as a client.
Well, it's just,
No longer.
those big ones are, for
Adds
those
up.
things, and that's a big chunk for us to absorb that fee. So I think 500, that's why I just asked, if 500 is that sweet spot? To where it catches most of the stuff. Cause that way, it's 2% of 15,000. That's a big chunk out of our bottom line. So it's worth doing the 2 charge.
Okay.
So I feel good about the $500 over, exactly as you stated, and I think with this sewer district, I don't know, I just
we
go
do,
back to the way we did.
we do an awful lot of transactions though. I mean, it adds up a lot over time. So eliminating some of those.
Yeah, but we're on the phone too with these people, and it's just one transaction going through and having to do another transaction, and they have to enter 2 transactions.
Well, that
Yeah,
causes
that makes
issues
sense.
when you'll explain saying, I have to run this twice.
For the
Then we'll have
large
to do that
ones.
Standard day too, and your bricks.
Yeah, I just 500, things over $500, I feel good
I
about
like
that.
that. We can always revisit it if
Yeah.
it needs to be fine tuned. So
It's just not every little one. I think that's, your time is worth more than that. So
Okay, do I have a motion?
I made the motion.
Oh.
I'll second the motion. Whatever it was.
Oh, yeah. You restate it, please.
I'd like to raise the minimum for the 2% fee to $500. Oh, yeah, whatever the resolution is, yeah.
It's all
Resolution
in here.
2025 dash J.
2024?
Five.
2025 dash J,
There you go.
2025 dash J.
So the one on the top. of the
So you
resolution
made
needs
your
to change.
motion?
Yeah.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion by Gibson, second by Marriott. Roll call vote. Arrington.
Yes.
Gibson.
Yes.
Marriott.
Yes.
Nelson's excused. Yuri.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1 excused. Welcome, Mayor. Hiding out in the background there. You must have a real boring day today or something.
Come on.
Item 7, pickleball court resurface. Discussion and possible action to approve a change order with Renner to resurface the 4 East. Did I say that?
Renner.
Renner to resurface the 4 East
More
pickleball
pickleball
courts at Pleasant Beach
Listen,
Park
listen.
in the amount of
Yeah.
19,563,000.
So this is
Tyson.
the existing courts.
They're covering it. Almost done.
Tyson.
It was a maintenance item. We've been getting calls and it was, the discussion was always getting the better price when the tournament courts were approved. Now that they are and they're moving forward is working this price in. So we had maintenance money planned on, and there's the ramp population that was gonna cover the 8,519 to do all 4 existing courts. There's two of them that are considerably worse. So
When you're trying to play, like you slip on them,
Yeah.
it's bad.
Whatever. It's just like we have a backhoe out, parked out in the in the side. We already bought it.
it's already there.
That's an inside joke with Tyson. Oh, no, not Tyson. Who is that?
Not me.
Who's the guy before?
I bring them all in here first.
So, this, is his in the budget as maintenance item already? Is that what you're saying?
So so the ramp population grant to do the repairs was the
800.
Yes,
8,000, sorry.
519, and then we would do the rest out of the maintenance budget.
Which it was budgeted or it was
Correct.
not, wasn't budgeted?
Yes, we've been starting to allocate those type of items like the parking lot, maintenance, those things that had sort of been left out in the past, so.
We also like, just from Founder's Day, like just the pickleball tournament, you can add another 3 to that. We've already deposited that, so that could go towards that as well.
I haven't talked to Phil and you guys yet, but the race brought in, some money as well. Not that's separate from the breakfast, but the race did bring in some money. That can go into the recreation budget too.
Okay, entertain a motion.
Gotta maintain it. I'll make a motion that we resurface the pickleball courts.
I'll second it.
Motion by Gibson, second by Arrington. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Any opposed?
And
I'm telling you,
have
have you
Motion.
been, half the community's there.
What?
It's true.
Did
We
we get a
gotta
better?
work on your math.
Is it-
Item 8, check signers.
Delete those.
Approve the removal of Mayor Call. Wait, huh? No. As check signer on the First Credit Union. Laurie.
Added Andrea to a check signer, but we always keep repeating that the mayor's on it because we never use them. We have 3
Yeah,
people.
I've never. I know.
We don't need to
Yeah.
do checks.
So,
So
yeah,
it's like, should we just take the mayor off? 'Cause we have now 3 in the office.
you okay with that?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we take Mayor Call off of the check signer approved
does it
list.
hurt to have, does it hurt to have him on just in case there's an emergency? I mean,
Usually we have.
Who are the signers right now?
Me, Andrea, and Tucker. So generally there is 2 of us around, if not, it's wait a day or something.
I'll second that motion.
well, I just want, is there a minimum signer on it?
Every check you have to have 2 people.
I know,
sign.
but
Is
is there
there
a
an
minimum,
issue?
is there a minimum amount of signers you can have on an
We
account?
don't want a lot of signers.
Right.
We don't want that.
That's an audit issue.
That's just too
I
many.
understand,
Yeah.
but I just,
Just to have people on in case an emergency, one of us are gone. But we
alright.
seem to have handled it for a long time.
Yeah, I've 7.5 years, I've never, yeah. Oh, in fact, they called me up, hey, you gotta come over and look at this. So, yeah, it's 6 months.
We motioned and seconded.
Yes. And then
Yes, I seconded it.
discussion.
Oh.
So, Favor say aye.
Aye.
I seconded it.
It was. Oh,
And Sarah,
okay, I thought.
There you go.
Oh, no.
I
Okay.
kicked you off.
I want to keep you on, Mayor.
I don't.
That's right, you picked me up. All right, item 9, cert sheds,
Oh, great.
discussion on community
Another one.
emergency response team cert sheds.
You're not done hearing from me.
And
So, yes,
this is your fault. I mean, go ahead.
I need help
Cindy,
too
you
from
don't
Cindy.
talk.
Come up, Cindy. And Tyson. So I had a resident that has a cert shed on their facility, on their residence. And the husband has some health issues and they don't want the cert shed there anymore. So it just brought up the discussion of like, well, where are these cert sheds? A, where are they? And B, what's in them? And what kind of condition are they in? And then another thing was she was getting like an appraisal on her home. They're getting possibly ready to sell it. And the shed added to their, not only their appraisal, but also their insurance type stuff. So anyway, it just brought up this discussion. So Cindy and I and Tyson started talking about cert sheds. And so do you want to take it from there a little bit?
Sure. So when we took the city 2023 started being in charge of CERT, we got a lot of information from past CERT things. I did find a paper document of existing CERT sheds. It is dated 2017. So anything newer than that, I don't know. Tyson and I went for a ride along last week.
Thank you.
We identified as many of these CERT sheds as we could and talked to Mrs. Carpenter. She's the resident that called and she took us back to the shed, opened it up. We checked out everything in there. They would like it removed. Previously, I guess a couple years ago, she wanted it moved off the property and was kind of got some pushback from other CERT involved people. Said, no, we need these supplies here. We need them here. So that's kind of where we are. My, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We were able to identify 5 of these sheds. 2 of them we couldn't visually find. But we couldn't just walk in a resident's backyard or some of those things. But we went to some of these addresses. So those 2 may or may not be there. We did also check out the utility trailer that exists. It's parked down in a resident's driveway. And we looked through some of those things. My feedback is a lot of these supplies are outdated. A lot of these sheds are falling apart. They're bulging, they're kind of junk, but I know a lot of residents are really attached to them.
So
I feel like they need to have those supplies where they are. My recommendation would to be mitigate these on an individual basis. So the Carpenters are asking for it to be removed. It is property of the city. I would say we remove the shed and go through those supplies as needed. Tyson and I found pry bars that he's like, those would be very helpful to us.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things in the sheds that if we had them in a central location, they could be used right now and be stored for an event that we would need, and we would have access to them when that happens. One of the sheds, we did have to actually cut the lock off because it was rusted and junked closed. So in an emergency, nobody is going to be able to get into that anyways.
Did you?
That's
talk
some of
to
our
the
concerns.
school, Bowman View, because that's not the principal anymore. That's like 3 principals ago.
Oh, I'm sure, because
And
2017.
I know the current principal would love for you to get rid of that.
Are you aware that there are even supplies there?
I don't think anybody's ever been in it.
Okay.
Since I've been
Well,
employed.
I think it'd be appropriate to maybe just go ahead and authorize our CERT coordinator to take, whatever necessary steps.
Contact. Shoot.
I don't know.
yeah, we just want to run it by the council to say like, is everybody okay with us going out and gathering the sheds and
There will be pushback, plenty of pushback from some people
Not from
that feel
Bowman
that that's really important and necessary to have these caches scattered throughout the community. And historically, I guess some of the CERT budget went to updating some of those supplies in there.
Well, I think
Additionally,
it's
we
part of
found-
the idea would be to evaluate each one and see the value. Is this one we want to keep here? Or
Yeah.
is it so old and that we need to repurpose it, or you know what I mean?
Sure.
I hate pulling this card, but I mean, is there any liability for us to have a shed out there that like, what if it collapses or what? I mean, I'm just saying the what ifs, but
Yeah.
like,
The cities
Well,
and now it's the city.
yeah.
Additionally, Tyson, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, and that was getting into the trailer and the liability of, I don't know, I was gonna look into being insured if, I don't know how that works, if the city owns it and this random resident, and what agreements were in place to have these. And then I guess the suggestion would be if we work through all the ones that sort of the willing parters, and then if, say there's 3 of them and we come back and then we can sort of sift through and identify and make an inventory and.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be relooked at. I mean, we don't have to just throw everything away. But
No.
I think if the, in the future, if we need to reestablish some with new sheds, whatever, and newer supplies, then that's what we should look for. But I think the whole program of these sheds and the concept needs to be reevaluated, and I think the certain people should do it.
well, sorry, one more thing, sorry. And if we do relocate them, I'd like to relocate them on public property, not
Yes.
residential property.
Yes.
And I do feel strongly about bringing the trailer back. Like,
Yeah.
that one I feel strongly about.
That was exactly what I was gonna say. At our cert, at our Founder's Day cert, we talked about this a little bit, and I think that's either
Yeah.
parks or, at a church back by a shed or something would be appropriate for that.
Right. I agree with that too.
Do we need to make a motion, Mayor, to?
It's not really. I think we just
to
give
allow
direction,
us
say,
to
yeah, let's
bid?
go for it.
I think let cert handle it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
They
You
have,
want, I can give you, I know Brittany too, his son lives in his house now too.
they have no value if we don't know what's in them
Yeah.
and where they are and how to.
We get into them.
We, like a concern that Tyson had is there's lantern fuel
Oh.
in some of these sheds.
Wow.
Buckets of lime. I
Don't
don't,
say it's the city shed, we just got hurt, they're not maintaining it.
Or it goes up on fire and
some of the walls
we're
were coming
responsible
down.
for that.
Yeah,
Is it as
I don't
fun as our little
Did
cert
you-
house out here? I don't
I'd
know.
like to, I'd like to go
That's
see
another
somebody.
discussion for another day.
I'm
We're
willing.
gonna, okay, so
Thank you.
go for it, please. We're gonna move past item 10, other business, to a closed meeting. We need to go, we do need to have a closed meeting to exact language, discuss property acquisition. Thank you. So I'd entertain a motion to go into
So
by
moved.
year that have this
Second.
down pat. Okay, motion by, is this gonna be a roll call vote? Yes, motion by Arrington, second by Gibson. Roll call, Gibson.
Yes.
Marriott. Yes. Yuri. Arrington.
Yes.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's why you guys are here.